Okay, well, I want to welcome everyone here. Thank you for coming. I'm Jamie Johnson, President of the School Board, and tonight's meeting is really an informational meeting about the referendum we have coming up on April 5th. Thankfully, I'll be letting Dr. Nicolette do most of the talking tonight, but I just wanted to thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to get the facts, and anything that you don't find here, you can always ask questions. There will be an opportunity for that after the presentation as well. So at this time, I can just get going with the video. All right.
So we'd like to start off with a video that just kind of brings everything to a point with the referendum. So we'll start with that, and then we'll move into a presentation.
We have great schools, we have great teachers, we have great support in our community.
The overall goal of this referendum is about transforming the way we deliver education. On April 5th, we'll be going to voters with 3 referendum questions. Question number 1 is to renovate the current high school, transform its spaces for student learning. Question number 2 is to add on to the existing middle school. Question number 3 is to build a multi-use athletic facility and upgrade our current auditorium at Hudson.
You have your hands on the right pattern.
What we're trying to accomplish at the high school is we're trying to invest in what's already there by improving the infrastructure, improving the HVAC, improving the spaces in general.
All the classrooms are really small. There's a lot of people in each class, which makes like learning a little bit more distracting.
When you think about buildings that are 30, 40, 50 years old, learning was different then.
I'm looking for more space for my students to have a comfortable learning environment. They do a great job. They're troopers, don't get me wrong, but it's not conducive to the kind of learning that we should be doing here at Hudson.
Part of this transformation comes from being able to change the functionality of the building.
The safety piece of it, you look in the hallway from class to class.
There's one hallway that's just hundreds, if not like over 1,000 students trying to get through there in the 6-minute period we have.
Did that increase or decrease as part of it?
We've begun our STEM and Healthcare Academy model.
Probably the most important part of the academy is getting that education that's more oriented towards the field you're interested in.
We want to create more opportunities such as that, but we're limited in the amount of space. At the end of the day, this really impacts our students.
At the middle school level, we are over capacity for that building. So with this proposed addition, we're trying to accomplish getting teachers out of spaces that weren't originally designed to be classrooms.
We pride ourselves at the middle level on what used to be a strong and positive house concept, what some people call school within a school.
Ideally, each student would remain in one house throughout the day. Currently, when I teach, I don't have my own classroom. This is the only thing that I have.
It's making do with what spaces are available. We currently have several special education programs located in what used to be either office spaces, storage areas, or makeshift spaces.
The main thing that would make me a better teacher for having a classroom would be the connections with students that I'd be able to form.
Question 3 is really about providing access. By having a new multi-use facility and an upgrade to our current auditorium, what that does is allowing more people to use that facility. That really is a community investment.
We have great music programs, great athletic teams. Our community is super proud of all those programs, but our facilities are out of date.
In our conference, the Big Rivers Conference, we're the only grass field in the league.
And they're still on side. We're in the gyms here, but there's also another 5 or 6 sports that are also competing for gym space.
A turf field, a field that everybody can use.
It kind of gives you like a dozen football fields because you can use a turf field 24 hours a day if you want, 7 days a week.
Our auditorium is old. It is in need of updated lighting and sound equipment to really enhance the performances of our fine arts folks and all of the community members that use that space.
I would encourage members of the community to really seek out the facts surrounding these 3 referendum questions and take time to visit our website to find out more information. And remember, please vote April 5th.
PowerPoint up, and the first slide is where we start, is how this process all started. Many people in this room, this is not the first time that you've been involved in the community engagement process. And I guess I'm talking about it for a couple reasons. One is that we started that process before Nick was even interviewed, let alone hired. We started the community engagement process in January. And it was designed, developed by a process steward team that consisted of 2 administrators, 2 school board members, myself, and Bruce Hanson, who's also here tonight, and then 4 members of the community. And throughout that whole process, we had like 39 meetings. We developed a 4-stage engagement process to develop the expectations this community has for learning, as well as the needs. And we consulted with staff as well, other experts, and just getting constant community feedback. The small workshops, small group workshops, and the informational meetings started in April, and the process steward team constantly sought out facts. We had a new demographic study done to help us with updating enrollment projections. We also had Bray architects involved in assessing our facilities and comparing us to industry standards, what other school districts have for facilities, and then of course back to the experts again in the community about programming. What do you want to see Hudson have? So it was a long 4-stage process with lots of meetings, and culminating in the meeting that many of you that are in this room were here in the multi-purpose room on September 2nd, where we had over 160 community members. I guess the estimates were between 160 and 180. We had more people in this room, we couldn't even have everyone. We had some people have to go down to the cafeteria. And from there, we had 22 options that were developed. And then in a 5.5-hour meeting, a very transparent process led by Dr. Oled with a green dot, red dot exercise, we allowed more community feedback at that meeting, and then board members gave their reasons as different options were narrowed down. We narrowed it down to 3, and then did a survey. That was kind of the 4th stage of the community engagement process. A survey that was done by School Perceptions, and this is a company that does surveys for districts around the state, and they said that it is the most comprehensive and lengthy survey they've ever done. And they came through with recommendations once they analyzed all the data and said, here's the option that we think has the best opportunity to get past in your community. And so the school board listened to School Perceptions. And so we're rather proud with this process and how much we have partnered with the community to come up with this long-term solution. So now we'll have Nick give more of the details, but I asked Matt Wolford, who's going to be one of the people here, help answer any questions on the technical side. Matt's been an architect and working with school districts throughout the state, building their projects. And he's been involved in a lot of community engagement process. He said that he has never seen one that had a meeting in this room on September 2nd with this many people showing up. And it's one of the most comprehensive that he's seen in the state. So it's not just us touting our horn, and this is coming from people who had exposure to lots of different districts. So with that, I guess turn it over to Dr. Nicolette, and he'll take us through the 3 questions.
Thanks, Jamie. All right. Really what I want to do is I'm going to go through the presentation. If you have questions, we'll have some time at the end to ask questions, and Jamie may interject if I'm missing anything throughout the process. But and then we also have Brian Brewer from Barrett Financial here to answer questions related to the finances. We have, as James said, Matt Wolford here from Bray Architecture to answer questions related to building design, things along those lines as well. So without any further ado, I will start the presentation. One thing that we want to talk about is kind of the tagline for this referendum, and it's about transforming spaces and reinvesting in excellence. And the reason we chose that was to really talk about transforming the spaces as far as it's not putting lipstick on a pig. You know, we hear that when it comes to question number 1, this is lipstick on a pig. It's not a new building. And I say to them, this is not lipstick on a pig. We are changing the animal altogether. And you're going to see in the next few slides what I mean by that. But that's really where we're going with the transforming spaces. changing spaces so that we can continue to educate kids in 21st century ways, and also for ways that, you know, into the future, and it's flexible. With the reinvesting in excellence, we see this as a reinvestment in facilities that we already have. We had, in the past, we had a referendum for an additional facility. This referendum is about reinvesting in what we already have. It's additional space at the middle school, it's additional space and renovation at the high school, and it's renovations to our auditorium and to our athletic facilities. As we go through here, how we got here, and Jamie touched on this a little bit in the community engagement process, it all culminated with that survey that he talked about. And everybody should have got it in their mailbox. It was a long survey. Sometimes it was to look at it, it seemed a little bit intimidating because of the information. But from that survey, 71% of the respondents said to us, do something right now. Maybe not the same thing, but do something right now. And so what the board did is they looked through the survey, they got the feedback from the community, and that's how, through the community engagement process, the survey feedback, they drafted these resolution questions. In the survey, things that the board took into consideration were the highest priorities surrounded updating our lab space, both our science labs, our technology labs, additions and redesigns to classrooms, both at the middle school and the high school, to better meet our instructional needs. And then one of the other ones that was up there was replacing and improving existing infrastructure and aging infrastructure. And that is a key feature of the referendum that surrounds question number 1, which is improving the high school. What you see in front of me here, or in front of you, is question number 1, which is not to exceed $74,300,000 as far as the bond value, but there is an additional $2,700,000 on top of that the board would be using from savings to help offset this amount. So it is actually a $77 million project, but there's about $2.7 million of savings that the board has accumulated over the years that they're going to apply to this project, so there's not as much money that needs to be borrowed. What you see in this image, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in these slides, is you see a 2-story addition out in front of the building. You see the main offices off to the right here, weight and fitness facility upgrades, lots of glass to bring natural light into the building, and really trying to bring that natural light in to enhance learning. As we work through this, and the need piece that's up here right now, and we talked about it a little bit in the video, is we need classrooms that are flexible for the next generation of learners. And so we got to be able to adapt. So these classrooms we would envision potentially with walls that move, different size classrooms, different size spaces that kids could check out those spaces, adults could check out those spaces, but just really changing the way we deliver instruction that way. We also want to increase and improve our special education space. Our special education population is not going down, it increases, and one of the things that happens when you have an increasing special ed population, you have to take classrooms that were originally designed for, let's say, math or for science or for reading or language arts, and they have to be converted into spaces to serve certain populations of students. And we're more than happy to do that, but when you do those things, what happens is you change the capacity of the building. People often say to me, Nick, what's the capacity of these buildings? And I say to them, you tell me what the program is, and I'll tell you what the capacity is. Meaning this, next year at the high school, for example, we have a health classroom that currently this year is getting 6 periods a day at 25 kids a period. So it's serving 150 students all day long. Next year it's going to become a special education classroom because we have some increased need in special education. It could serve maybe 3 or 4 students all day. And that's okay because we need to meet the needs of those kids, but now we've changed the capacity of that building. So what the building may have originally been designed for and what we're currently using it for is not necessarily always the same number. So it really does depend on that program. As far as creating space to grow the academy structure, as you saw in the video, we have 2 academies right now, a healthcare academy and a STEM academy. What those academies are is they allow students to gear their coursework in a specific area or in a specific field. So the healthcare field, it allows them to, when they're taking math courses, science courses, English courses in those areas, they're gearing the assignments and they're gearing the work that they do in those classes around the healthcare fields. Same thing with the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is STEM. You'll hear that word a lot. Again, gearing those classes in that academy around that area of interest. We're looking at, what other types of programs can we look at expanding, entrepreneurial academy potentially, and some additional ones as we try to meet student needs. And then the last component is improving the building function and the safe environment. The current high school site, it'll be 2 slides away. The current high school site was originally a middle school that was designed, I think it was 1965? 62. And the high school, which is on the east wing, was dedicated in 1975. And then I believe it was 92 or 93 is when those buildings were actually merged together because they built that addition in between. But that building as it sits was never looked at from a systemic approach of how can we maximize the space in there. That's what we're trying to do with this addition and with this renovation, is really look at the entire building and how can we make the building function in a better manner. People often ask, how do you get to such a high number? Where does all that money go? And what you can do is you can find on our website every line item for every dollar of the $77 million is accounted for on our website. This is a smaller breakdown of where those numbers come from. But one of the things that we heard from people is, that's a lot of detail to give at this point. And I said, well, it's a lot of money to ask from people. And so I think it's important that they see where each dollar goes. It's broken down by the square foot of how much we're anticipating improving the HVAC per square foot, or how much we're anticipating the electrical upgrades per square foot, or demolition. And you can see all those different components and how that adds up over time. But I think the biggest takeaway, because sometimes people will try to characterize this as a $77 million renovation, and that's not accurate. Okay, this is this project is broken down into these different categories. About $11.4 million of it is really upgrading the infrastructure. The HVAC, the plumbing, the fire protection, windows, roofing, things along those lines. The site improvements, which is becoming better neighbors and better stewards by retaining our stormwater that we haven't done in the past, because when the buildings were built, that wasn't a requirement. By adding additional parking, as we'll talk about coming up here in the next few slides. But just overall making the site better. The addition on the front of this building is about 114,000 square feet. And people say, well, how big is that? That's a hard number to wrap my mind around. Well, to give you an idea, Rivercrest, the building to the south here, the elementary, is about 92,000 square feet. So it's a building about the size, a little over the size of Rivercrest, added to the high school building to help it function better and to improve our core capacity. And then we have the renovations of the building are about $24,000. And then we have to, what's that? Oh, sorry, yeah, 24 million. 24,000 would be a dream. 24 million, and then our construction fees, soft costs, insurance, all overhead profit, things like that, come in around 14 million. So the actual number is 76,998,700. We rounded it to 77 million on this question. The other questions, we actually rounded it down. But essentially, that's how you're getting to the 77 million. And you can see at the bottom, the bonding or the referendum question is going to ask for 74,300,000, and it's up to that amount. And I think that's what's important to understand is that if it costs less, you don't have to spend it all. And you don't have to sell those bonds, and you don't have to go into debt. And people say, oh, but it's the school district. They'll try to do that. Well, I will tell you this. There is probably not another district that I've seen that has the fiscal responsibility and restraint as the Hudson School District. And remember, I'm new to the district. As much as I would like to claim credit for it, I can't. It's the previous boards and administrations that have done it. But our district, on an annual basis, could spend $13 million more a year than they currently spend, and the board chooses not to in order to maintain property taxes at a certain rate and in order to keep things low. So they have demonstrated fiscal restraint, and so I don't want you to think that because if it comes in low, the board's just going to find more things to spend the money on. They have a demonstrated track record of fiscal restraint. Oops, wrong way. So what you see up here is the site plan if question number 1 was to pass. Out front, in this yellow portion here, is the new addition of the high school. It solves several problems for us. If you've been at the high school at all during the day, or if you have children that are at the high school, one of the issues we have when these buildings were designed is we have some different pinch points in hallways and different areas of the building. Well, what this addition does is it creates another arterial across these two buildings to help aid in the traffic flow of students throughout the day and improve the safety. Because right now, the kids have taken upon themselves to create what's called an outdoor hallway. They walk along, and you saw it a little bit on the video. The goal was not to focus on that, but it's to alleviate some of those things. You see the two-story addition out front, administrative offices, weight and fitness facilities, an additional gymnasium at the high school, and then an expanded commons area, which would be a cafeteria area, commons area that can be used for a variety of things. Additionally on this site, currently at the high school, there are about 650, 675 parking spots. What this plan would propose is a little over 1,000 parking spots on site. And what that would do, we believe, would help us be better neighbors. Because right now, we do not have enough parking spots for our kids. And if anybody lives around the high school, they know what that means. They park in the side streets. And sometimes when you have rows and rows of cars in the side streets, you end up with sometimes the garbage doesn't get picked up or the mail doesn't get delivered. And so we think that by adding capacity of parking on site, pulling our kids back onto site instead of having them park in the neighborhoods, that we become better neighbors and better stewards of the area. In addition to this, we'd be putting some of that parking on the backside there, but these are conceptual plans. Some people say, well, how is that traffic going to flow? How is that all going to work? One of the parts of this project would be a traffic study to make sure that the site does flow better, to make sure that we can get cars on and off of Vine in an efficient manner. But I can tell you one thing, is I've been in 5 school districts. I've seen lots of elementaries, lots of middle schools, and lots of high schools. And there's nothing we are going to be able to do to completely eliminate any type of traffic issues in the morning and in the afternoon at drop-off and pickup. Because the amount of infrastructure you'd have to put in to make it flow like it was, noon, it just wouldn't be sustainable. We will take every effort. We will work with the city to make sure that we can improve the situation on Vine Street and the surrounding neighborhoods and really try to make it a better situation for everybody involved. This is a tough image for you to see, I know, in the seats, but you can find this presentation on our website and you can look up close with this. But the big takeaway with this image is this. You have the new addition out front here. There's a 28 classroom, 2-story addition, and it's a net gain of about 10 extra classrooms. And you say, well, I don't get that because you said you're adding 28. How is it only a net gain of 10? Well, what happens is, in the east wing of the building, the classrooms that are currently there are undersized. They're undersized, they don't lay out well, and what we need to do and what we propose is basically tearing everything out of the inside of this part of the building and rebuilding it. So what maybe had 3 classrooms before now has 2 larger classrooms. What maybe had 4 classrooms has 2 classrooms and a collaboration space. And so what ends up happening is, we lose some classrooms, and that's where we need to add some of those classrooms back in that front addition. Also on this plan, you see this half circle shape here. This is a locker bay. It's where we're pulling the lockers out of the hallways and putting them in a central location. And I know the first response was the same one I had. So we're going to bring all the kids to the same spot to their lockers. That seems problematic. Well, the difference is when these spaces are designed, they're designed to handle high traffic flows of kids. They're designed with making sure there's enough spaces between the rows of lockers so that kids can easily move in and out and do those types of things. And so it helps us solve some of the other issues that we're going to show in a minute as far as the traffic flow throughout the building. But I think the other takeaway from this design, not to mention the additional gym space, athletic space, and common space, which moves us into a commons of 800 at round tables, is the fact that every square foot of this building gets some level of renovation. The goal of this project, and part of the reason why it does cost what it costs, is that we want to get to a point that no matter which door you walk into in this building, you can't tell if it was the addition that was done in 2017, 18, or 19, or it was part of the existing building in 1975, or the existing building in 1962. That is the goal of the renovation. It's not to have the haves and the have-nots throughout the building. It really is to get the same level of finishes, the same level of renovation throughout the entire building. And so you'll be able to see when you have an opportunity on your computer or at home what exactly that means in each space. And that's outlined on our website. The second floor has, again, the second story, the two-story addition, weight and fitness facilities out front. It has the freshman academy going on the second floor of the east wing. It's been redesigned, so there is collaboration spaces. It makes sense. We kind of do a school within a school model for our freshmen. It's been a very, very successful transition model for us, and we're looking at how do we create that space to make it function even better. We're going to try something a little bit new at the high school here, where we're going to make the main entrance actually look like the main entrance compared to what we have now, where we have the auditorium entrance and then the main entrance is like 200 or 300 feet away, and it kind of throws you for a little bit of a loop. What this is here is this is the main entrance if you're walking up to the new/old Hudson High School. So an inviting main entrance, the two-story addition, as you can see to the left, offices off to the right, the ability to just have an inviting entrance for our kids and for our community. This next image is potentially what the commons area would look like. Now, again, lots of glass, lots of natural light. And at this point, when we talk to the architects and Matt's here to answer questions, but we're really talking about a square footage cost. And some people say a lot of glass, a lot of money, but really at this point, it's at a square footage conceptual point. This could change 20 different ways between now and final construction. But what we want to do is give people an idea of what potentially it could look like, and what type of space our kids could go to school in. Again, round tables, connecting not only the first floor hallways, but second floor hallways to be able to get kids to pass through the building more efficiently as well. This, however, is not a new space, as you can see. And I think the thing that's interesting about this space, and that's really caught my eye when we looked at this, is that if this student happened to be at his locker, let's say right here, it takes the actual functional width of that hallway down to about 2 or 3 feet. Because what happens is all the hallway doors swing out, or all the classroom doors swing out into the hallway. And if he was at his locker, when you think about these young ladies coming through the hall, there's about a 3-foot passage there. Those are the bottlenecks that you may hear your kids talk about or your grandkids talk about. And those are the things we're trying to alleviate. We said to the architects, what can you do with this? How could we improve this? A lot of times people say, what's your need? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Well, this is one of those problems we're trying to solve. And we think that solving it looks like this. This is the exact same hallway. What we've done in this hallway is we've removed the lockers because they've gone in the locker bay. We have taken and redone all the door openings, and they now open into the classrooms instead of out into the hallways. And then on the west wing, for example, there's 2 spaces in the west wing that were light courts. They were originally designed courtyards, is what I used to always call them, but apparently the new term is light courts. And over the time, they were filled in with classrooms. Well, what happens is the middle of that building gets very dense and no natural light. So some of the proposal would be to remove those classrooms that are in there, open those back up, bring natural light back into that center of the building, and that's what you see here with those windows. And so that's what we would envision that hallway that's currently in the west wing of the high school looking like. This next picture, it's not distorted, and no, you're not seeing things. This is actually the egg-shaped bathrooms in the west wing of the high school as well. These bathrooms cause multiple problems for us. Although they're not aesthetically pleasing, the other issue we have is you can get all the way around them, which creates a supervision issue. It means kids can hide on the other side. And anytime we have, we call them blind spots or areas where we can't provide supervision, it creates a supervision issue. And so what we said to the architects is, what could you do with this space? And I'm thinking they're going to say, well, we could paint it white and try to make it blend in with the walls or something like that. And they said, this is what we would envision this space looking like. We would envision, standing workstations for kids. We would envision collaborative table setups so that teachers could send groups of students out into the hall to work on projects with glass, lots of glass looking out into the halls that provide passive supervision so teachers can have kids out there without having to be out there. charging stations, soft furniture, just really having that space transformed to a different style of learning. And then relocating those bathrooms that were there to a different spot in that same area of the building. But when we talk about renovation, and I talk about not putting lipstick on a pig, but changing the animal, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about totally transforming the spaces in which our kids go to school. And this is a prime example of what that would potentially look like. So oftentimes I will hear, Nick, I have lived through a renovation of my kitchen or my living room or my bathroom, and it is a horrendous process. How are you going to do this while kids are going to school? And not only that, but a large project like this. And so again, on the website, you'll be able to look much more detailed than what you could probably see from there. But essentially, we would look at a phased approach, 9 different phases. So if the referendum was to pass in April 5th, what would happen is the first thing the board would do would go out for an RFP to hire an architectural firm to take us to that next step in the project. There would be about 8 to 10 months worth of design development time. And that's where they're meeting with teachers and administration and different groups to determine what does the space look like. Because these are very conceptual drawings. And then what would happen probably by December is we'd finalize those conceptual designs, and then they would go into a construction drawing phase where they're creating the documents, the blueprints that companies can actually bid the project out on, and it would go to bid likely in February of 2017, with a groundbreaking in April of 2017, give or take a month or two. So what would happen in the very first phase would be phase 1. It would be the new addition. That phase would go in right away so that then we could take students when that's completed and move them out of other areas of the building into phase 1 while that part of the building is being renovated while the school year is going on. So as you can see on this timeline, when we would think the completion date of each phase would be, or the duration of each phase would be, you're able to find that right on our website and how we think that that would all fit together. The second question has to do with the building you're currently sitting in, the middle school. And as you're aware, we have a need at the middle school. And the need is we are currently over capacity. And we need to look at how can we minimize the number of teachers that we have on carts. We currently have 13 teachers on carts. We have 4 classrooms in the elementary, which is just to the, directionally, what is that, just to the north of us. I almost said south, I'm sorry. Hudson Prairie. We have them using 4 classrooms there. And we're looking at how can we help alleviate some of this pressure. This does not solve every teacher on carts, guaranteed. But this is really about how do we relieve some of that pressure. How do we provide an adequate and appropriate space for special ed? As Ann talked about in the video, we have special education students currently receiving services in places that were designed to be storage areas for PE, and places that were designed to be offices, or places that are kind of set up with some different partitions and things along those lines. And so really it is looking at how do we also free up some flexibility there. Restore the flexible and collaborative learning spaces. That's again a goal of this project. And then also increase gymnasium space, because this project, or this portion of the project, is about adding 10 to 12 classrooms at the middle school here and in an additional gym site. So currently at the middle school we have almost 1,300 students in this building. We have 1 gymnasium there. We have this multi-purpose room which gets used all the time for PE, but we have 1 gymnasium and we're undersized. But the nice thing about the gymnasium piece is that while we need it during the day for PE, if you've ever had kids or grandkids involved in HBA or any other of the nightly kid activities and basketball and things, you know that gym space is at a premium in our district. So this provides more space for the community to use, for our kids to use in the evening. So how does this break out? Again, site improvements, because this is an addition to the building, it's not a major change to the building. There's minimal site improvements, about $290,000, and a lot of that has to do with putting the site back together after having construction equipment on it. The addition itself is about $5.9 million. The renovations, because there's some spaces where we connect into the building, you'll see that there's about $470,000 of renovations. And then we have the construction fees, soft cost furniture, insurance, permit fees, a variety of other things that are wrapped into that number as well, which gets us to about $8.706 million, and we rounded it down to $8.7 million. The referendum is for $7.9 million. It's because the board, again, is going to take $800,000 from savings and apply it to this project to get the cost down. Where would this go? The two-story addition would go on the back of the building here, and it would essentially connect the existing gym that's right here to the backside of the office space that's right over there. And how that would function is, you can see the 5 or 6 classrooms on each level would go right through. We are currently, I'm standing about right there. So you would go out those doors to the left here, I guess to your left, and you'd be going into the new gymnasium. Essentially is where that would be. The renovation, as we talked about, where does that money for the renovation, why is that needed? When we punch through here to put a hallway, we have to renovate some of these spaces because we're taking up spaces, and you can't just poke a hole through the side of the building and not expect some level of renovation cost. But this also does some functionality things for us as well. Because if you think about this, if you're currently coming in the main entrance and you need to get to the band room, you now have to go all the way up, around, and back down. Whereas we would envision that during passing time for kids, or during other times, where you could come through and you'd cut right through this house structure here, the gymnasiums would be open, and be able to get to other parts of the building. It adds another arterial to this building. If you've had students in the middle school, they will talk to you about the crowdedness of this main hallway here. And so we think that definitely helps with that functionality as well. This is an image of what the second story looked like. It's basically a mirrored image of what's below. And then this image here is what potentially the outside of the building would look like, tucked back behind there. Yes, we know that there's currently an outdoor classroom space there. That would be relocated to another spot on the property. So it's not as though we would be taking it and not replacing it. That's also built into the cost of the project as well. But we thought that this makes the most sense. It makes the most cost-effective sense to add this square footage in this location. The third question, question 3, has to do with transforming our performing arts spaces, physical education spaces, and outdoor athletic venues, and trying to enhance opportunities both for our kids and for the community. The need. We need to expand student and community athletic opportunities, and then we also need to enhance the student and audience performance in the auditorium. As we talk about the first part of this question, we'll talk about how this question breaks down, because there's some information floating around that this is an $8.2 million stadium project, and that's just not true. This is actually a $2.46 million auditorium project and a $5.755 stadium project. And so we rounded them to basically 2.4 and 5.8, and that's where you get the $8.2 million project altogether. The first part of this question has to deal with the auditorium. And the auditorium itself is not a bad space. Do we wish it would be bigger? Sure, who doesn't wish it was bigger? But this referendum and this question is not about expanding the size of the auditorium. This is really about expanding improving the performance experience in the auditorium, both for our kids and for the people watching those performances. What we said to the architects is, okay, this is our current auditorium. What would that look like if we wanted to enhance that? What would it look like with improvements? So they gave us this image. They said, this is what we think we could do with the auditorium space. It would mean new seating, new carpeting, new lighting to increase our lighting capacity and our ability to handle all of our lighting needs in-house versus needing to rent lighting. Sound and acoustical clouds up on the ceiling to improve sound quality, acoustical treatments on the walls, bring in the school colors, all of those different components, and new rigging, new sound, all those different pieces. Again, things that impact the performance experience. The second part of that question is essentially the $5.8 million stadium project. It's an on-site project at the high school. And we would envision this field going on the southeast corner of the current high school site. And what we feel is great about this is that we can utilize, we need the parking during the day for our kids. We need that parking during the day. But at night, we can utilize that parking as well for that facility. And so we really get to get the most utilization as we can out of that facility. What we think that could potentially look like is an all-weather field and track. And people say, I heard the word turf. Here we go again, another thing for the football team. And what I say to them is, it's for everybody but the football team. Not that we wouldn't let the football team play on it, because we would, but it's for everybody else. The football team has a great place to play at Newton Field. It is a very nice facility. The problem with it is, they're the only ones that play on it. So this coming year at Newton Field, there will be 3 home football games, and there will be 2 home track meets. And that's it. And well, and the Rotary costume walk, which I participated in, and that's quite an event. But that venue doesn't get used. Because it being a natural grass field and trying to maintain it, it can't get used to the same level as field turf. So when we talk about putting turf on this facility, we're talking about the marching band. Instead of practicing in the parking lot, they're practicing in the stadium. Instead of the soccer team playing at the middle school, they can play at the high school. They can practice in the same places that they play. Little kids at night can use this for events. Adult leagues can use this. This field can be used basically all the time. It doesn't need the rest that a grass field needs. In addition to this, we have bathrooms and concession facilities, and we're very close to the high school. The question comes up, why not just renovate Newton Field? And we did look at that. And one of the things with Newton Field is this, is that to do Newton Field to the same capacity that we're looking at doing this facility, it would be more expensive. And it's for a couple of reasons. This has what's called a European track on it. You say, that doesn't mean anything to me. Well, what it means is the distance between the 2 straightaways is much wider. You can play soccer on it. You can play lacrosse on it. You can do more things on it. Whereas when Newton Field was originally designed, that wasn't a consideration. And so the thought would be that if we're going to stick all this money into this facility, we want to have as many of our sports be able to play on it. So also at Newton Field, so we would have to widen it. We are currently servicing Newton Field with 6 porta potties. That's what we service that facility with. Once you start putting permanent bathrooms in, because people often ask, well, what's the trigger? It's the fact that we're putting in permanent bathrooms, we have to build them to code. And when you build things to code, the bathroom count for Newton Field would be 70 bathroom stalls, 70. 30 men's stalls, 40 women's stalls. And so we go from 6 porta potties to 70 stalls. So you never will have to wait in line again, is really what it says. But it's somewhat overkill. But there's a clause within the building code that allows us to count any bathroom stalls within 500 feet of the bleachers. Well, the thing about this is, as close as this stadium is to the high school, we get to count bathrooms that are currently existing in the high school. So instead of needing to put an extra building out there that has to accommodate 70 bathroom stalls, maybe that building only needs to accommodate 30 bathroom stalls. 15 for men, 15 for women, or 12 for men, 18 for women, however that breakout is. But we can count those spaces so that building size is smaller. The locker rooms, we currently have locker rooms at the high school. They can be utilized by the football team and things like that. We wouldn't have to create more locker rooms at Newton Field if we built that facility. So what ends up happening is, the biggest savings is the size of this building shrinks drastically. At Newton Field, it's a $3 million building, whereas on this facility, it's a little over $1 million building. And so that's where we start to see a difference in our costs and things along those lines. So really what people a lot of times will care about is, what is it going to cost? What does it cost me? That's what I care about. Yes, I might be passionate about education, but what does it mean to me in my pocket? Well, this referendum is set up that it would be, if all 3 questions passed, it would cost 90 cents about per 1,000. And you say, okay, that means nothing to me. Give me something that means something. Well, if your house is valued at $100,000, and not what you paid for it or what you think it's worth, but the equalized value on your tax statement that came out in December is $100,000, your taxes would go up as a result of this referendum $90. If your house is worth $200,000, it would go up $180. And if your house is $300,000, it would go up $270. That's in addition to what you're already paying. Because part of what we're doing, and I'm going to show you the next slide, is we're taking advantage of some debt that we're currently paying on, and that is going to be falling off over the next 12 years. So that is if all 3 questions pass, and we are using pretty conservative numbers. And just to give you an idea of how conservative they are, we're guessing of interest rates. Our interest rates are almost a percentage point higher than where they currently are. And when we started this project, they've gone down since we started this project about 6 months ago. They've gone down over the last 6 months. But we're hedging that they may go up. And so we're calculating things based on an interest rate that's almost an entire point higher than where they're at. We're also calculating it based on valuation increases in the district. So basically the value of all the property in the district only going up by 2% a year for 3 years, and then 1% a year for every year after that. You say, well, what does that mean? Well, on average, over the last 15 years, the value of the district has increased by over 5% a year. Some years it's been really good, and some years around 2009 and 2008, it was negative. But on average, over the last 15 years, it's gone up almost 5%. And so, but we are using a much more conservative approach to it, because what we want to do is we would rather under-promise and over-deliver when it comes to the impact of the debt service mill rate. As I talked about earlier, and Brian is here from Barrett, if you have questions, he's more than happy to go through them. But how does this all work? Because some people say, if you do nothing, my taxes will go down. And I say, maybe. And they say, well, you sound like you're a politician already when you use the word maybe. But no, what would happen is you're absolutely correct. The debt service mill rate on your tax bill would 100% go down if we did nothing over the next 12 years. There is no doubt about it. But there are other entities and other taxing entities, not just the school district, that are impacted by your property and that you pay property tax on. So I can't guarantee you in good conscience that your taxes would go down if nothing was done. And one of the things that happens, we talked about how do we layer the debt that we'd be paying back in. So we're currently paying about 97 cents. So everybody lives in the district about 97 cents per thousand. We are currently paying to service debt that we already have. I believe it's the middle school. We're still paying a little bit on the middle school, Rivercrest, and there might be 1 or 2 other things that we're paying on. But over the next 12 years, and it's really hard to see in this, but it's much easier to see on the website, is you'll see where this debt drops down. It's kind of about where my clicker is here. And over the years, it drops down. So in the first year, it's basically a 90-cent increase on top of what you're already paying. Then as the debt drops down, there's a little bit more added, and then a little more added. So this would be $1.87 for the mill rate for debt service in year 1, and we would project that it would be $1.87 for mill rate in year 23. The difference being that in year 1, it's 90 cents to make to that, and in year 23, it's $1.87. But it keeps it flat all the way across here. And I think that's an important thing to understand, is that this is the existing debt. And so we're talking about increasing it, because we're not using code, we're not saying impact, we're not saying any of these other things. We're saying this is an increase into what you're already paying. And so we want to be very clear on that so that people don't think that we're mincing words on some different things. So as we move through here, what I wanted to touch on, and then we'll open it up for questions, is we do have another upcoming presentation. It will be almost deja vu for you if you come to that one on the 24th, but we'd love to have you. It will be at Hudson High School. On the 24th, there will be another presentation like this, and then an opportunity for building tours after the presentation is over, and you can see what the different parts of the building are like and what some of the plans are. So with that being said, what questions can I answer for you? Yes, sir.
First of all, I just want to say this is really great work. And secondly, if the middle school stuff passes, will that light get fixed?
So
we
what?
Make up a collection right now.
So what happens with those lights is it's an energy thing. So when there's not enough movement, when everybody's sitting still, the motion sensors don't detect any movement, it turns the lights off. And so everybody's been such a captive audience and they haven't been moving. And so then what happens is, and you don't see it, but Tracy then goes and walks around in the back to get the light to kick back on for us. So that's what's happening with that light back there. It's an energy thing. Other questions? Yeah?
I have a question about the high school. And actually my question is, are you looking in the future and doing enough? I'm kind of a numbers guy, I'm not an accountant, but I like to play with them. And if I look at the square footage, and you look online, you find so many square feet per student, I come out with a calculation that somewhere between 1,900 and 2,000 students. That would be if it was 100% occupied. Now, if you're an educator, you know you never want to be at 100%. So if you look, 90%, 85% is something that is used in the industries I found. So that tells me in the next few, if we did this, our functional capacity would be around 1,700 to 1,800. Gillespie says in 2025 we're going to have 1,903 students. That's the mid-range of his research. Now beyond there, I don't put a lot of credibility in beyond 2025, but so what it tells me in 2025 we'll have 1,903 students in a 1,700 to 1,800 capacity high school. So are we underbuilding, or do we have the ability to modify if we do have to add?
That's a great question. So this plan is designed to handle the current student body and then any fluctuations in the future. And the way it's designed to do that is this building's designed with a classroom for every teacher and then also designed for office space for every teacher. And so what happens is if we continue to grow, if the capacity needs to be raised up, what can happen is we can move teachers from the classroom having their own individual classroom, and then they can have dedicated office space, and we can up the amount of usage of those classrooms to be able to handle additional students. You know, the commons area is really the area you have to look at the most because that's the cafeteria area, the core area, the number of gyms, the width of the hallways. We feel that the building is designed that at 800 students, if we ran 3 lunches through there, that we could handle 2,400 kids through there if everybody showed up to school that day, and if we were really pushing it through. If you needed to go to 4 lunches, you could. To give you an example, I was assistant principal at East High School in Des Moines, 2,500 kids. Our cafeteria held 425 students, and we ran 5 lunches. They overlapped, and it still wasn't enough space, so we had to have open campus. And so what we've done here is make sure we don't get ourselves into that position. We feel that we are building for today, for tomorrow, and for the foreseeable future, but not building so much that we're going to end up with empty space down the road. But thank you for the question. There's a question? Yes?
My high school daughter is on the gymnastics team. She has to drive or be driven to Hudson Gymnastics for practice, and when we have meets in our district, they're at Willow, and the kids set the equipment up themselves, haul it out from under the stage, set it up, and then when it's all over, put it back. It feels really unsafe.
Absolutely.
And it's also not a good venue for gymnastics meets and things like that. Is there has there been any discussion about, would our new facilities accommodate the gymnasts on campus?
Absolutely, and I'll go back to the site plan. I'm sorry, the floor plan on question 1. I'm getting there. Sorry. So what we would envision happening is that the gym space, I think they currently call it the West Gym, because we'd be adding additional gym space here during the gymnastics season. We would envision that this space would be able to handle gymnastics being set up and being left up. So it wasn't a takedown, set up type thing. Really making sure that all of our kids have a space that's going to be safe and meet their needs. Absolutely.
What about the swim teams? Do they still need to keep going to the middle school?
This does not include a pool. This plan does not include a pool. It's not that this plan couldn't be set up so that down the road a pool could be added to it. But as of right now, this plan does not include adding another swimming pool to the district.
Nick, can I just make a point? I just wanted to add the last couple of questions. One is the gymnastics, and the other one is the capacity. Do you have the
Top green button.
Bruce just said, "Oh boy, Jamie." And I don't know if the public that's watching on TV or will be watching the video could hear the last question, but it had to do with gymnastics and the ability. I know we've got a lot of competition among our sports, between the sports, just to be able to have practice areas. And that's the one big deficit that was identified in the community engagement process, was our common areas. And then we had experts like Ray architects tell us, what our other schools have, and then analyze what we have. Here we have the largest middle school in the state, grades 6 through 8, and we have gym space that we have. Now, that's not a criticism necessarily of what they did 25 years ago when this building was designed. This is a very good building, and it was built to service 1,125. We have almost 1,300 middle school kids here. And the gymnasium space, with all the different sports, we even, at the last school board meeting, we had the lacrosse club come forward. There's a sport that 25 years ago, this district wasn't planning for. But there's a sport that started with 14 kids. Now they have 350 kids in lacrosse. And so they won't be able to play on Newton Field, not just because of the limited use of Newton Field, because you have to let it rest, but also it's just not wide enough. And so likewise, with different sports being able to use gym space, we're going to be able to reduce that competition. And then thinking about the capacity, getting back to, again, not criticisms of what they designed these buildings for 50, 40, 25 years ago. You know, here's the west side, which those who went to Hudson High School here, in 1962, they decided to move the 7th through 9th graders up. And that was what this was kind of a junior high area. Do I have that right, Paul? And so that's a building that at the time it was built, the per grades that were being graduated was probably under 150, I would think. Somewhere in that 150 to 170 range, maybe. Something like that. This was built to accommodate up to, and that was with big growth anticipated, or more growth, because every time we built here in Hudson, we always tried to anticipate more people coming. And this thing was about 500 students. Well, 13 years later, Britt built a high school. There's another building that at the time it was built, it was 250 kids about in class or less. But they built it to gain some capacity. And now we're going to be graduating, when is it? This year, over 450 kids, 450 seniors, somewhere around there. So, you know, here's that hallway Nick identified. You might have seen on the video where kids are trying to, and you had the one student comment about how hundreds, if not 1,000 kids trying to get from one side of the building. So where did they go? You saw in the video them walking outside in front of the high school. That's what most of the kids do. And they don't take their coats with them because their lockers are at the extreme ranges of the building, stashed all over the place. Kids these days, they don't take coats with them. And so they're going out in the cold, walking outside. It's the outside hallway. This eliminates that. But we do keep lockers in this area for freshman academy on the second floor. And here would only be sophomores through seniors. So I just wanted to show this floor plan gets us one cohesively designed 21st century learning space. Not one that was first built in 62, then 75, with additions in 93, and then connected by a hallway where doors open into the middle, and you've got hundreds of students trying to walk through there. All right, more questions?
I actually just had a comment. One thing, by adding space in other buildings, I'm with the parent group at Willow, and we have difficulty scheduling enrichment events for our students because of the need to have the gym for gymnastics, for basketball, or all kinds of other things. And so it really limits our ability to give the elementary kids enriched experiences or have parent group meetings or things of that nature because we're competing for space in that way too. So to add it up here would be fantastic because of what we're doing.
Absolutely. And the gym at the gym here in the middle school could be, you know, utilized by all different groups. Our elementaries are used, the elementary gyms are used every night. I mean, every gym in our district is basically used every night. And so really having some of that core capacity expansion, both at the high school and the middle school, really helps alleviate some of that pressure and provide opportunities for all of our kids, not just some of our kids. Other question? Yes, sir.
You mentioned in modifying the auditorium or improving it to be more useful, to replace the seats and all the car seats. How will the seat replacement improve that situation?
Well, the big piece is Oh, sorry, repeat the question. So he asked, we talked about renovating the auditorium. How is replacing the seats and the carpet making that space more useful? Is that okay? And really, it is similar to replacing a couch in your house, replacing the carpet in your living room. Eventually, over time, they need to be updated. They need to be replaced. They start to wear out. And so that's really what's happening to those pieces in the auditorium. It really is, in some places, obviously the seats that are designed today are a better seat, we would hope, than what was designed in 92, 93 when that addition was done. And so you would have some benefits, I think, from that. But also part of this is just updating, because the space is 20, 25 years old. Absolutely.
Would there be less legroom? Would the seats be closer together?
No, as of right now, I mean, we would look at having the same style of seats that are in there now as far as the width. Seats are primarily judged based on the width of the seat, whether it's 24-inch seats, 23-inch seats, 22. So we would anticipate, at least right now, pulling the seats back, the way they are.
Why is there legroom in front of you?
Yeah, we wouldn't want to make them any closer, because that could be uncomfortable. We may understand.
Does the renovation of the auditorium include improving behind the stage, backstage, storage, props, the practice rooms that are for band off of that? I mean, does all of that sort of get renovated as part and parcel of auditorium renovation?
Well, so the auditorium renovation is really talking primarily about inside the question. Oh, sorry. I'm not great at that. So she asked, is there additional things? What other things? Is it behind the stage stuff? Is that going to be renovated? Support spaces for band, for choir, for other fine arts? How does that all work within these referendums? And how are those spaces being accommodated? And really what happens is, for question number 3, it is really talking about this space right here, which is the stage, the backstage, the dressing rooms, and updating all of those pieces. But part of question number 1 has us expanding our fine arts space, because currently where the cafeteria currently is, a large portion of that would become fine arts space, either band or choir, be determined as we work through that. And then in addition, could be additional set space or prop space to build some spaces like that to really improve the functionality. So although the box of the performance venue, the auditorium, may not be getting bigger, the footprint for fine arts would be expanding drastically in this building through the 3 referendum questions. Yes, sir.
How much of the building has sprinkler systems now, and would they be added sprinklers?
There's some small areas.
There are some small pockets of the building that have sprinklers, but that would be part of the project, that the entire building would be sprinklered and brought up to code, both with the fire suppression sprinkler system and with fire monitoring systems and smoke alarms and things along those lines as well. Believe it or not, that's not a cheap undertaking. Yes, ma'am.
Just wondering what other safety and security new technology would be active at the school?
Absolutely. So one of the things about this building. One of the safety and security upgrades that would be considered when looking at this building and designing this building, and how would that be taken into consideration? This building, the renovations in the new addition would be designed to the most current safety standards and architectural standards to improve that. The ability to lock down wings of the building much more efficiently than what we can do right now to mitigate risk to students. We would continue to have a controlled front entrance. All of our other doors are all controlled, electronically controlled as well. We have a very elaborate camera system that is in the high school building. We would maintain that and make sure that we're also improving that if there are areas where we don't feel we have coverage. But really, it would take all those things into consideration that you mentioned to really make sure that if there are areas that we can make the buildings more safe, whether it be taking out areas that are blind spots, as we talked about earlier, or areas where to make sure the building stays locked down, we take all those things into consideration. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
You have a design proposal here, but you said you're going to go out for an RFP for a different architect. Do you expect this proposal to be what's going to be built, or do you think an architect might change it?
Well, yeah, that's an excellent point. So the board has chosen to go for an RFP if the referendum passes. The current architect would have the opportunity to throw their name in, along with other architects that meet the qualifications. It could potentially change from this. Even if it was the same architect, it could potentially change from this. What this is a conceptual design of what we believe it could look like. And in order to put numbers to generate a $77 million figure for this building, we have to start accounting for square footage. We have to start accounting for classroom spaces. And so what this does, this floor plan and level of renovations, is it allows us to account for that, to generate the numbers that tell us about what it would cost. Could the shapes change? Sure. Could the functionality change a little bit? Absolutely. The inside of the spaces, it absolutely could. But we're trying to account for the amount of square footage we need to run the program we'd like to run in that building. So yes, it could change from the way it currently looks.
So then what's the plan for Newton Field if this passes?
Okay, so the plan for Newton Field would be to open up more community access to Newton Field. The district would still maintain Newton Field, but get more community events on Newton Field and really get more people using that facility. Since it wouldn't be a varsity competition field anymore, we could get more events on that field, and we could get more people using it. And so that would be the plan. What's that?
What are the more events? What else could be used for? Who's going to
So potentially it could be JV games, it could be freshman games, it could be community checkout, little kids leagues that could use that facility. We have lacrosse could practice there. Now the games aren't very good there because of the size, but maybe they could practice there. So there's a variety of different groups. Our fields, like our gyms, are used almost all the time as well. And so there's a variety of different uses that could happen on Newton Field. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if the site plan includes improvements to Oak and Fillmore and 12th Street kind of intersection, and how that adding of all the impervious surface with parking will impact some of the city stormwater issues, and if those improvements will be paid by the citizens or the city, or if they're included in the plan.
Okay. Well, a couple things. The question was, would there be road and infrastructure improvements to Oak, to Fillmore, basically to all the side areas, and with all of the impervious places with the asphalt and the parking lots, what are we going to do with all the storm water that accumulates? Is that a fair assessment of the question? So part of what this plan would do would take that into account. Part of what we're required to do is hold our stormwater on site for up to 24 hours, something that we're not currently doing now. It goes everywhere. So bringing it up to the DNR standards for stormwater retention and really becoming better about that. The traffic study that we talked about to improve or to look at what would be the best way to exit students from that site, have students enter from that site, maybe road improvements to the different streets. Usually what happens with those road improvements it is a cost to the district, but when people say, is it the citizens that pay for it? Whether the city does it or whether the district does it, the citizens are paying for it. Because at the end of the day, it's the taxpayer. But that's built in, we have some contingency monies built into the site improvement to take into account that there may be some of those requirements at this point. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up.
Yeah.
Right now on the north side, a lot of that stormwater goes right down to Lake Now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that this new infrastructure would channel that water?
Again, it'd be working with the DNR and working with the city to try to, follow the DNR requirements. First of all, holding our stormwater on site, and then what is the best route for it to leave the site? Eventually, it's got to go somewhere. And so,
Matt can answer that.
I'll let Matt answer it.
Two quick answers to that one. I assume it's going to still head in that direction when it's done, so the parking lot in the back of the building. But in addition to quantity of water, as Nick described that we have to store, we also have to treat the quantity piece of it. Quality, I'm sorry. Quantity is one component, quality is another component. So before it leaves our site, we have to clean the water if it runs off of a parking lot, get it to a reasonable level of quality, and then release it at the same rate that it is currently leaving. So it probably will go the same direction, but it's gonna leave in a cleaner and in a slower manner when we're done.
Matt? I'm going to give you the microphone back, but on this point about the stormwater retention and the interrelationship between question 1 and question 3, and because I know that was a major factor in the board, when we tried to follow the survey, it was pretty clear on question 3 that the community wasn't supporting $14 million in new athletics for moving everything to the high school site right away. So the board opted for basically starting with the multi-purpose. But talk about the cost savings and just the overall planning ability for this water retention system when you are doing the on-site multi-purpose facility.
I don't need to repeat that question, right? You guys heard that one? That's hard to do. I screwed that up last time I was here. So really related to stormwater is a very complex issue, and we have worked with a civil engineer in planning this project, and we've met with the city on one formal occasion and had additional follow-up afterwards. The big picture plan is one of 2 things for stormwater quantity with the first question. One option would be enhancing the existing stormwater pond, which sits behind the church adjacent to the property. The district would be, then we would be moving our water below grade to that location. That's one option. The city hasn't committed. The other option, which is a bit more expensive and it's what the budget is currently based on, would be on-site below grade stormwater detention. So a series of large pipes, they're basically half dome plastic pipes that would be below the parking and below the green space, so the water would be cleaned and then led into those locations and then released from the site slowly. So that's what the base project is. Now the benefit of doing the multi-purpose stadium as part of the project is that we need a significant amount of drainage and gravel below a piece of synthetic turf in the multi-purpose stadium. So when we are doing that, we simply enlarge those pipes slightly that we needed anyway. We're going to be excavating, we're going to be putting the gravel in, so we enlarge those pipes, and those become a significant portion of what we need for our stormwater quantity piece. So there's definitely a synergy to doing these 2 projects together. We have the first question budgeted regardless of what happens. The first question can handle the stormwater piece from a budget perspective, but there's definitely an efficiency and economy to having both of those questions done together.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I got another question on the opposite end of the scale now. We talk about not building enough in the high school now. Let's look at the elementary school. If you look at the numbers there, technically over the next few years, we may be 200 or 300 technically empty seats. Now we know that again, we talk about architectural capacity and functional capacity is what we got to use. You have said before that if we continue to have that, you would move some administrative offices back into the elementary schools. What would you sell the building out there, or what would be the plan there to utilize those elementary rooms that potentially?
And there's actually more than 200 or 300 empty seats. It's probably closer to 500. And what it is our elementaries they can't run at 100% capacity. And the reason they can't run at 100% capacity is because our attendance boundaries. And so if you think about it like this, if we wanted to get 75 third graders at Hudson Prairie, where my son goes to school, we have to draw an attendance boundary a certain way to get 75 kids inside that circle. But to get the 75 fourth graders at Hudson Prairie that same year, we got to draw a different circle, because at the Olette house, there's no fourth graders. There's only a third grader. And so essentially, to get the buildings to 100% capacity all the time, we would be theoretically looking at a different attendance boundary for each grade level that would have to change annually in order to continue to maintain at 100%. Because as the Olettes go from having a third grader to a fourth grader, they got to redraw that third grade line to account for that fourth grader, that there's no longer a third grader in our house. And then all of a sudden we're adding a kindergartner to the mix. And so we have to have space in our elementaries to be able to ebb and flow with neighborhood changes. Otherwise, we end up in this boundary discussion very frequently. And what it said to the board is, if you think referendums are hard, deal with elementary parents on a boundary discussion, and then do it on an annual basis. That creates an issue. And what we heard from the survey, and the feedback we got from the survey was, people like the grade configurations. the 6-8, the 9-12, the K-5s. They like the way we are currently set up, and that's what the board is trying to do and honor with these referendum questions. Butch talked a little bit about would we move offices into these spaces. Absolutely, if we all of a sudden start to see a tremendous drop in enrollment and we start to see capacity rates drop quite a bit, we would have to look at and reevaluate how we're utilizing our buildings. And we have a district office that's out on Brackey Road. It'd be great if it was closer in, but that could come into one of these buildings or into a variety of buildings in empty spaces. And then that building that's out on Brackey Road, which we currently own, could be sold. So those things would be something that we definitely would want to keep on the forefront if we start to see, you know, those dips and those declines and lots of empty spaces. The thing you have to remember when somebody says, well, there's 500 empty spaces at the elementary, it's not as though there's just 20 empty classrooms at 25 kids. It doesn't work that way. What it is we're saying that 27 kids is the capacity in 5th grade, and it might be that 5th grade class has 25 kids in it. And since we have 19 sections of 5th grade, if you take 2 kids less than the 27, all of a sudden now you have almost 40 empty spaces. But you don't have 40 empty spaces in one building. And so that's the issue. It might be 2 spaces here, 3 spaces there, 1 space here. It is not as though we are sitting on empty classrooms. It is that we have some of those spots that are available so that we're not at 100% class size every year right when we start the year. Sometimes we add kids, sometimes we lose kids throughout the year. We don't lose them. I mean, they move out. But that happens throughout the course of the year. So we have to be able to ebb and flow at the elementary. At the middle school and high school, we run them at a little higher capacity, and we have the ability to do that because it's not an attendance boundary issue with the middle schools and the high schools. Other questions?
Well, the question I have and concern is, as we think about what's happening with the way people learn, hybrid kind of educational processes, is that built into any of this? I mean, I'm almost thinking we're talking about incarcerating these kids again, you know, from 7:15 to, I don't know, time they get out, 2:30 or something. But what about the idea of where kids could do something? And where some of this is coming from, when they had that snow day over in western Minnesota someplace, some of the school districts said, well, they were being closed, but it was a flexible learning day. So where's our flexible learning fitting into this?
Absolutely. So the question is, how does this building flex and become flexible as learning needs changes or as technologies changes? Would that be it?
I'm thinking like online classes.
Online classes, different opportunities.
Close to River Falls. I mean, I was in this building 20 years ago, and I had a 6th grader who only came to class twice a week because he was already being taken to River Falls for some classes there.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the big piece is that's what we're looking at when we talk about changing the way the walls are set up, changing up the way the collaboration is set up, the rooms where kids can check out rooms and work in groups. There is a potential for online classes. We have kids taking online classes now, but they're not taking all of their classes online. They're taking some of their classes online, and we continue to have that. But you know, as of right now and for the foreseeable future, we still believe that the best model is a teacher working with those kids in a face-to-face environment for the most part. Not that online learning doesn't have its place, but you know, and it could be better and it could continue to change. But we think this model, what this does, is it builds for right now, but it also builds for that next generation you're talking about with that flexibility as well.
Well, even like, I know there are kids who go to New Richmond, the tech school arrangement, they're not all here. They're
Absolutely.
all someplace else, part of the day, whatever, and I want to know how that's fitting into this plan.
So the question was, we have some kids that go up to WITC in New Richmond to take technical classes. Absolutely, that's all taken into consideration when we're accounting for spaces in the building and what type of spaces, because it may change, as we talked about. We may be changing from more of those course class spaces to more of those academy type of classes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the liberal arts type of academies. It could be career and technical academies that could be in this building. And we believe that the way these spaces are designed, we'd be able to handle that changing environment for our kids. Absolutely. Other questions? Yeah.
I was just curious on the Newton Field. You mentioned that if it's in close proximity to another building within 500 feet, you don't need as many bathrooms. Well, Newton Fields, I think it's within 500 feet of EP Rock. How does that work?
Well, and what it is, it's the base of the bleachers, and where the base of the bleachers are in relation to the bathrooms in the building. And so it just happens to be where the way EP Rock is set up, we don't have bathrooms in that building that are as close to the field as we do at the high school, because we have all those bathrooms at the high school that are servicing the basketball courts and the gymnasium areas. And so that's where we get to count those extra bathrooms that are close enough to that base of the bleachers. I think, Matt, you could probably speak to it. It's from the exit.
I can tell you've been listening to me. You hit that one really well. Yes, 500 feet from the base of the bleacher to the entrance to the bathroom. And the advantage we have when we're putting this addition on, assuming question 3 moves forward as well, we're able to design and specifically position those bathrooms to make sure that we're within that 500-foot target. So that is a significant advantage to having shared facilities, as you can imagine. And the only people that won, I think Kohler had a really good lobby when they put our new building code in place, because this is a challenge we have in every community, is the size those bathrooms have to be.
Other questions? Yep, in the back.
Just to go on that, if you pass, use those bathrooms. On the picture, it shows a concession stand off the side or something. Why couldn't they put a concession stand shared, whether it's basketball, right part of the main building, and it's already open up? It's right there.
And it absolutely could
repeat the question.
Sorry. The question is, why couldn't there be a shared concession stand between the basketball kind of field house area and the stadium area? Was that a fair assessment? And it absolutely could be. And what that building is, just again, it's a conceptual design of what it could potentially look like. We are restricted a little bit because we have to have a roadway that goes all the way around the building for fire equipment to get by. And as you can see on the site, if I can get to it, it starts to get a little tight. It starts to get a little tight through here. And so there is potential that maybe something could go in there, and it could be used. It could be used for both facilities, and that would be part of that design development phase when we dig into it a little bit deeper and how we can better utilize those spaces. I know that's an excellent question. Yes.
You were saying that this will not take all of the middle school, take all the teachers off the carts. So what's the long term for the however many we think will still be on carts? At what point will they have their own space?
You know, and really that's going to be about programming the building and how that's all going to flow. You know, so the reason we say we can't guarantee gets every teacher on carts because it may cause us to have to change the way the building's programmed based on our special education needs, English language learning needs, and things like that. So, you know, the long-term plan is we do anticipate, you know, the enrollment in the middle school leveling and then maybe coming down a little bit. If that's the case, we may be able to get everybody off the carts at that time. But we wanted to have a plan that wasn't going to, you know, some people worry about us overbuilding. And so we feel like this plan addresses the majority of those middle school needs, but doesn't put us in a situation that down the road we have empty classrooms. And so that's really what we're trying to balance with the solution in middle school. Well, I appreciate all the questions that you had tonight. What we have set up for the next component of the evening, you're welcome to stay. I will be up here. Matt is up here from Gray. Brian is up here from Bear to answer questions about financials and all of those components. We have a tax calculator on our website, but I'm sure we can bring it up on a computer up here. We can plug in the value of your house and find out exactly what it's going to, the increase would be in your taxes. So they're up here, but we also have tours of this building. And people leading tours, we have 2 administrators in the back, we have Ann and Trevor in the back, and they can lead separate tours of this building. So I think what we will do is if you have an interest in going on a tour and seeing what the middle school looks like, because there's some people, they haven't been in the classroom areas of the building, or they haven't been in the non-core areas, you'll be able to get a tour of the building, and if people want to stay and ask questions, come up and ask questions, that's fine too. So they will kind of be in the back, and they'll be in 2 different groups, and we'll be taking people around the building. And I just want to close with this because we won't have everybody here all together anymore after this moment. Is I encourage you to seek out the facts on April 5th. And I encourage you to talk to your neighbors and talk to your friends and talk to your family to seek out the facts to make an informed decision on April 5th. We're not lobbying people one way or the other. What we're just saying is, please seek out the facts and make an informed decision on April 5th. And really make sure that as you're hearing things out there, if you have questions, or if you think things don't seem right, or you're hearing things that don't seem quite right, feel free to give me a call, send me an email. You can call the district, anybody, any of the building principals, and you can talk to them, and we'll get you the answers that you need in order to make that informed decision. So again, I appreciate your attendance tonight. I appreciate the hard chairs for over an hour and what that means. And I thank you very much. All the information that we went over tonight is all available on our website on top of additional information as well. So thank you very much, and the tours will start at the back. Thank you.